I'm Syed. I'm the founder of MetaCog, a startup building AI for education, and I'm also a data science student at IIT Madras in Chennai, India. I'm here to present to you LedgerSync, which is a cross-agent context management protocol that helps inculcate a senior engineer's instinct within AI coding systems. So in recent months, as you probably know, AI agents have taken over coding and they're able to write really good code. The main problem with AI coding agents is that while they write technically correct software, they lack inherent intuition that software engineers implicitly carry. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're building a cooking application, and you use today's AI agents are more than capable of building a cooking application with like 1,000 recipes. But imagine if the AI agent misses out to include allergens in its recipes. This is an example where a lack of intuition could lead to disastrous consequences. But a software engineer building the same software would have an implicit understanding of, okay, if I'm building a cooking application, I should include the allergens for the ingredients. So what do senior engineers carry? Well, they carry stuff like product values, the product's philosophy, the design taste, safety constraints, user research. Why does the product exist? They understand this deeply. And this is implicit knowledge that shapes every decision at every step. Though AI agents implicitly understand this to a certain degree, there's not a framework that enforces this that exists today. And maybe product philosophy holds on prompt 1 and prompt 2, but by prompt 5 or the moment you switch to another IDE, that context is lost. Like I mentioned, add to this the fact that context is lost every time you switch tools. Today, data tells us that 59% of developers use 3+ AI coding tools. So they take Cursor, they go to Cloud Code, then they go to Codex, come back to Cursor. You want the core directives to be persistent across all of these IDEs, regardless of which tools you use. So, but how do you encode and persist product taste? I'd like to coin this term called boats, back of the head stuff. This is basically an implicit understanding that senior engineers have that remains at the back of their head every single time they code something. And LedgerSync, which is the framework that I propose here, formalizes boats into structured files every agent reads before writing code. And the best part is that the protocol itself is cross-agent, it's persistent. So boats is, the boats context carries across every session and across every IDE. Now let me explain to you what the LedgerSync framework looks like. So it uses a config.yaml. Now let's actually look at these files in action. So as an experiment for this demo, I built an anti-hustle to-do app. So it's a very minimalist to-do app wherein it's for people with ADHD, people who struggle to manage many tasks at once, basically. It's called Mindful. And as you can see here, the config.yaml describes everything that I need for this application. What it needs to ground its philosophy to, the purpose of the application itself, and all the hard constraints, and also, the ledger configuration itself. And these are the hard constraints that I've mentioned, like no gamification, calm messaging, calm design, all of this stuff. And reading the philosophy document itself, this outlines Mindful's product philosophy. This is going to probably stay the same till the end of the product cycle. And as you can see here, this philosophy contains principles, things that should not deviate when building the product. And as you can see here, it explains why the product is the way it is and why we're building out certain features. Time is not a dimension here. Equality of attention, so there's no priority fields. And we celebrate emptiness, meaning we celebrate completion, basically. And we celebrate emptiness. Most to-do apps are chaotic. They celebrate deadlines, they celebrate completion, but we celebrate emptiness. When there's not a lot to do, it's probably a good thing. So this outlines the philosophy of the application itself. And the design is pretty simple also. As you can see here, it has a color palette, a design system, and what everything should look like, what everything should feel like. This also contains the aesthetic of the application itself. So yeah, that's where we are. Before I show you the ledger, let me actually show you the experimental setup that we have for this demo. So yeah, here's the experiment. Like I mentioned, it's an anti-hustle to-do app. The decision to build this application is intentional because it has contrarian design decisions. You see, coding agents tend to the mean. So they will try to build a hyper-productive application in the moment I mentioned to-do app. But this intentionally contains contrarian design decisions to check if LedgerSync helps ground the application to the philosophy. So as you can see here, there are 3 constraints, which is there should be only 3 tasks at once visible, and no deadlines, no reminders, and no notifications also. And it's an ephemeral state, meaning as I complete each task, it goes away. That's it, and I can only have 3 at once. So the developmental setup itself looks like this. We have Cloud Code with Cloud Code Sonnet 4.5, and we have GPT Codex running Codex 5.2 medium reasoning. And the only variable between the 2 experiments is whether LedgerSync is present or absent. And these are the prompts that we use to build the application itself. So first we start off with Cloud Code, build an application, and gave it instructions like it should feel calm and anti-hustle. And then we switch to Codex to make some modifications, and then jump back to Cloud Code to improve the styling. And this is where the curveball lies. So we asked Codex to add a time tracking feature to the tasks menu so that users can log hours. So let's say I'm a freelancer, I would like to log hours. Now, this is against the core philosophy of the application. Time is not a dimension. So we'll see how it handles. Now, let's actually see the applications themselves. Let me first show you. So this was built without LedgerSync. As you can see, pretty minimal UI. So let me add some tasks now. Well, that's a spoiler. Yeah, so I did not apply the constraint. It just fell victim to adding the hours. And even though we explicitly mentioned that time is not a dimension here, and obviously I can just log that those functionalities work well. And there are other, and let me add more tasks. Lights, check, hotels. So it doesn't let me add any more. That is good, I guess. It doesn't let me add more than 3. And if I were to complete something, it stays. But we had a hard constraint to make sure that only 3 are visible at once, but it does not go away. So this tends to become a pretty large list, basically. And remember who you're building for. We're building for people with ADHD, people who struggle to manage or they get intimidated by multiple tasks. As this list keeps growing, this only affects the customer even more. Now let's go to the let's look at the demo of the application that was built with LedgerSync. Again, very minimal UI, and let's do the same thing here. Record for LedgerSync and go to the gym and finish tasks. So it doesn't let me add any more tasks as expected. Now I can complete it. Good, less on your plate. That's good. And I can remove tasks. Gone. And as you can see here, the state itself is ephemeral and it does not display more than 3 tasks at once, which is way more calming for the target audience. And as you can see here, no time logging whatsoever. The most impressive thing about this was that when I asked Codex to build out the time tracking feature, it told me it can't do it because it conflicts with the core philosophy. And it also suggested me better options that does not that basically sidesteps, and it suggested me better options if I want the time tracking module. However, given this exact same prompt, as you can see, the unconstrained agent just went ahead and built the feature by itself. So this is the advantage of using LedgerSync. Now, looking at the flow itself, so this is basically what happens. So the agent 1, let's say plot code reads the configuration, it reads the philosophy documents, it builds with the taste in its mind, basically. It logs, and then it gets done, logs its reasoning, and hands it off to Codex. The next agent reads the documents, reads the ledger, understands why certain things were done, and then continues its work. This happens at every request. So you have taste, you have sense, you have product philosophy and core design preserved across handoffs and across sessions. And this is what the ledger itself looks like. As you can see, every single ledger entry gets its own UUID. Obviously, this was written by Cloud Code at the initial stage. And this is a very, very rich schema because it explains its reasoning, its intent, what considerations it took, assumptions, what it's uncertain about, and exactly which files it touched and how many lines it changed, as well as what it grounded the and what it grounded its actions to philosophy.md and design.md, what constraints it applied, and exactly how it aligned itself basically. And then the next again, it made 2 entries, plot code again, and then you go back, and then it goes back to Codex. Codex reads the first 2 ledger entries, it reads the core documents, it gets itself initialized, and then it goes again, grounding, constraints applied, and philosophy references, philosophy.md and design.md. So the key findings are that without LedgerSync, agents drift from the core philosophy and they accept any feature request, whereas with LedgerSync, agents internalize taste, in this case both. They self-police themselves and they refuse violations, as can be seen from GPT Codex's rejection of a feature. And some other findings include, well, this is Claude Code's initialization, which basically said it read the philosophy and it's clear. And this was something that's very interesting. This was an extract from one of the thinking processes of Claude Code, and the last line, 5, task count indicator, no, that's gamification, don't do it. So it's basically grounding its own thought process to the philosophy before outputting code. And some more, and it was another thing that was very interesting is the fact that it was aware of the fact that it was coding alongside Codex because of the ledger entries, and it basically started communicating with Codex in a way which was very interesting. So yeah, to summarize, LedgerSync is a cross-agent context management protocol that helps ground AI agents to core directives in such a way to give them the intuition that software engineers implicitly have. That's the objective of LedgerSync. Thank you.